This channel explores moments of self-reflection that arise in everyday life. Are we lost without religion? Fyodor Dostoevsky once wrote, "Without God, every boundary feels negotiable, and almost anything becomes permitted." For centuries, religion offered more than rituals. It gave a story big enough to hold our fears, and a map wide enough to explain our days. But today, many steps away not with anger, but with absence. The world accelerates, belief feels optional, and answers once inherited now feel like questions we must carry ourselves. Maybe the is not that religion is fading, but that something else has not yet formed. First, religion once gave meaning. Suffering was not just pain, but part of a path. Second, religion gave belonging. You were not searching alone, because even your doubts lived inside a circle that held you when you might have disappeared. And third, religion offered a compass. It prevented the judgment of right and wrong from being swayed by personal mood, and it kept truth from yielding to desire. So now, what if you asked yourself, what do you believe religion is meant to show us? When religion falls silent, will you ask or simply wait?
What would you honestly say?
Is truth still truth without proof? Karl Popper once wrote, "True ignorance is not the absence of knowledge, but the refusal to acquire it." Truth is often treated as something that can stand without being held by anyone. We assume what we remember must be real, accepting it without questioning its authenticity. Most truths we speak of are accepted, not examined. They come from habits, impressions, and what stays with us long enough to feel familiar. And maybe the real issue is that we no longer ask what makes truth true. First, we accept information because others say the same thing. Second, repetition begins to feel like evidence, especially when checking a fact feels difficult. In a busy day, speed replaces certainty. And third, in everyday life, statements are believed because questioning them feels inconvenient. A confident tone becomes a kind of proof, even when nothing supports it. In the end, truth becomes whatever is easiest to keep. So now what if you asked yourself, if truth has no proof, what tells you it is true? Without evidence, do you hold truth or release it?
What would you honestly say?
When does identity become a mask? Erik Erikson once wrote, "In the social jungle of human existence, there is no feeling of being alive without a sense of identity." We often think identity is something we discover and then keep, a stable answer to who we are. But identity is not fixed. It is shaped, tested, and adjusted in response to the world. When identity begins to serve acceptance rather than expression, it quietly changes its role. And maybe the real issue is that we confuse identity with safety. First, we learn early that certain traits are rewarded more than others. Second, work and social platforms quietly teach us to highlight strengths and hide doubts. And third, we hesitate before posting something honest online. We choose what will be received well over what feels true. We edit ourselves, deleting thoughts that feel too real. In the end, identity stops reflecting who you are and starts managing how you are received. So now, what if you asked yourself, when did you start wearing a mask over your identity? At what point did your identity stop being enough?
What would you honestly say?
Does moral outrage become power? Jonathan Haidt once wrote, "Moral emotions are powerful because they motivate us to act. We often assume outrage is simply a response to wrongdoing, a signal that something feels wrong. But outrage rarely stays quiet. In public spaces, it gathers attention and momentum. It moves faster than reflection and spreads more easily than doubt. When outrage is noticed and rewarded, it begins to change. What starts as feeling can slowly become influence. And maybe the real issue is that outrage is no longer just an emotion. First, social platforms reward strong reactions with visibility. Second, public morality is often measured by how loudly we respond. And third, a post gains traction not for clarity, but for intensity. Nuance fades as reactions pile up, comments escalate, position harden, and listening becomes rare. Algorithms amplify the strongest voices again and again. In the end, outrage stops asking for understanding and starts competing for authority. So now, what if you asked yourself, can moral outrage go beyond reaction and turn into influence? What shifts when moral outrage begins to carry trust and authority?
What would you honestly say?
Should power accumulate private wealth? Lord Acton once warned, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." We often think power is about responsibility and service, a position meant to protect public interests. But power also brings access, influence, and long-term opportunity. Over time, the line between public duty and private benefit can quietly blur. When power lasts long enough, accumulation can start to feel normal and deserved. What begins as authority slowly invites personal reward. And maybe the real issue is not corruption, but normalization. First, systems allow wealth to grow legally alongside political power. Second, transparency becomes selective, framed as privacy or technical complexity. And third, public attention drifts away from gradual accumulation over time. Scandals fade, but assets remain. Rules are followed, yet public trust erodes quietly. What looks acceptable on paper often feels wrong in lived reality. In the end, power stops, serving the public, and starts protecting what it has gained. So now, what if you asked yourself, is political power meant to serve the public or personal wealth? At what point did we accept power being used for private gain?
What would you honestly say? See you in the next video.